Hello there, my lovely lovelies, and welcome to haQ attaQ. Now, I want to start with the ADHD TikTok attention span of the video and show you some highlights of Unfiltered Audio's Battalion. The app combines both drum synthesis and sample playback to produce all of its sounds. And you can use one or the other, or just mix them up for a really rich sound. I don't need no keys, just a screen and a dream. Load that app, watch it pause to the screen. Scroll through sounds, got the vibe on lock. Building up a beat like I'm stacking a block. Touch screen glow while I'm taking a sip. Got my iPad up while I'm taking a trip. Mixing on a plane, I don't even need Wi-Fi. Cooking up flames while we're touching the sky. Screen so clean, see the baseline hit. Just tap 2 times, now it loops real slick. So cold, got the melody froze, but the drums hit hot like I lit the stove. Gotta finger everything, yeah, finger everything.
What did he say?
In the synthesis section, we have 25 modules where each and every one of them have been tailored to produce drum sounds. And as you're going through these modules, you'll also realize that you're going through a wide range of different synthesis methods. Here we've got a lot of them represented. We got subtractive, additive, FM, car plus strong, wave and phase shaping, including glitching style synthesis. Now, the synthesis doesn't quite stop there, because if we head on over to the sample section, we also have 5 distinct engines. And 2 of them, the cloner and granular, actually adds synthesis to the sample mix, which is so dope. Now, what's so good about Battalion is that it's very easy to tweak drum sounds in here. Whether you're tweaking inside the synth section or sample section, there's not that much to focus on. You select an engine and then you have 4 distinct knobs to tweak that engine. And that goes both for the synthesis section and sample section. Now, whether you're tweaking synth sounds or you're playing back samples and mixing them together, well, all of it goes through the tone section. On this side, we've got some subtractive synthesis going on, and here we can further shape our sounds with 11 different filter modes. We got low pass, band pass, high pass, and on top of that, various modes of comb filtering. And it doesn't stop there, because if we go over to this side, we've got some saturation and distortion algorithms, but it's actually more than that. There's 11 different types of algorithms in here. Here we have everything from bit crushing to mini glitching to phase distortion and even wave folding, which is my most favorite type of algorithm.
Just a screen and a dream. Load that app, watch it pause to the screen. Scroll through sounds, got the vibe on rock. Building up a beat like I'm stacking a block. Peace, just a screen and a dream. Load that app, watch it pause to the screen. Scroll through sounds, got the vibe on rock. Building up a beat like I'm stacking a block.
As you can see, there's a lot of sound generating and sound shaping abilities in here. And on top of that, we have a modulation section, which allows us to modulate each and every one of the knobs you see in here. It's pretty insane. Now, if we look at the sources, we got two macro controls, a random source, which is basically sample and hold. We got velocity. On top of that, we got two AHD envelopes, and then it finishes up with two wave-shapeable LFOs. Now, setting up modulation in Battalion is super easy. You go to a modulation source, activate it for mapping by tapping this icon, and then you go and drag on a destination. And after that, you simply just deactivate the modulation mapping by tapping that same icon. And let me just highlight here that you get to modulate everything, every parameter within a drum voice page, and that includes the modulation sources themselves. So if you want to use an envelope to modulate the other envelope, you can do that. Or you could just modulate an LFO with itself, and you can even stack up modulation from all of the modulation sources on one control. Now, computerized drum sequences can sound very staticky, and to fight that, well, what we usually do is to try to humanize our beats, but that's something we do at the sequence level. And that doesn't take care of another problem, which is the spectral and timbral quality of each drum. Consider a real drumming person hitting drums in a drum kit. They don't hit the same spot with the same strength every time, and that changes how a drum groove sounds and feels in general. And in Battalion, Unfiltered Audio has thought about this, and they've added something called variation. It's the biggest knob on the voice page, and when you turn it up, as you can see, each and every one of the knob changes with every drum hit. Now, while we're on the topic of making grooves, the Battalion sequencer is really powerful, and it is very, very quick to work with. First of all, if you are allergic to even making beats yourself, well, you've got a Euclidean sequence generator over here, where you got steps, fill, pattern, and rotate. And you can even invert whatever you've created here. And what's nice with this is that you can then, on top of this, program in your own triggers. And then the sequencer will combine your manual input together with the Euclidean generator. On top of that, if you want some shuffle, swing, or wonkiness in your groove, you can just set that up with the modify section, where you have shift, swing, shape, and density. But it doesn't stop there, because Battalion sequencer also has a generative flair to it, and you can configure that behavior inside the settings page, where you have something called a reset, which allows you to reset a sequence after a certain amount of steps. And on top of all that goodness, we also have modifiers, and you can draw them in. Balcony weirdo in a robe and socks, growing tiny fire in clay pot stalks. No soil bed, just a busted chair, chili plant grown like it's ready for warfare. Sun so bright got leaves twitching, plants got power, heat without permission. This heat's alive, it breeds, it learns, one whiff of the pot and your sinuses burn. Neighbors complain it's a weapon, bro. I said nah, just a fruit with a silent glow. Tiny red devils, sharp and mean, whipping through the air like raw adrenaline. In the cities, how my chill is alive. Quiet little warriors that thrive and survive. Small but savage, they hold a ground. Concrete jungle, there's no bigger sound. Midnight's humming, city never sleeps. My chill is heat, is a secret it keeps. stepping out, feel the spice in the air like a punch in the chest, but no one's aware. Neighbors peeking, eyes wide with doubt, whispers flying, what's that fire about? I just grin cause they don't understand this tiny plant's got a master plan. It's more than a fruit, it's a battle cry, a spark in the dark, a flame in the sky. In every bite there's a story untold, of heat, of fight, of courage bold. So watch it grow in its concrete space, balcony warrior claiming its place. With its hot flames it's standing tall, small but fierce, it's the queen of it all. To finish up the ADHD TikTok attention span of the video, as you can see, there is a lot of sound sculpting that you can do in each and every one of the 8 drum voices in Battalion. And on top of that, Battalion also offers you 2 whole pages with performance controls. In the performance page, you have access to all of the voice controls, and that includes all 8 voices. So if you're tweaking one knob, you're tweaking 8. Now for the sequencer, you have an all page where you can see all of the sequences for all of the 8 voices, including all of the timing controls. And this interface actually allows you to add and delete notes inside your sequences too. So it's perfect for a performance environment where you need an overview instead of having to flip through voice pages. Now, everything that you make in here, well, you can wet them up with 2 really good sounding effects. And both of them, the delay and reverb, has a control that I am particularly in love with. It's called S-rate, and it stands for sample rate. Now, these are controls you won't normally find in delay and reverb plugins, but Unfiltered Audio, well, they're not normal people, which is why their effects are so cool. I mean it, they're really weird. I asked them a simple question and this is what they said. What do you mean you don't believe me? It's a cool story, bro. On top of that, you have the master output section with 3 different modes of clipping. You got a 3-band equalizer, and you have a maximizer that is tweaked to make your drum mix sound as loud as possible. But how about those of us that want some real control over the sound and mix and processing of our drums? Well, fret not, because Battalion is actually a multi-output plugin, meaning we can individually output all of the drums on their own individual buses. If you're an iOS user, you're gonna be loading Battalion as an AUV3 plugin. And in this mode, when you've done that, you can just add some more channels and then go to the AUV3 multi-out and find all of the extra outputs that Battalion has to offer. And then you can just set up how these drums are getting distributed through these buses from within Battalion. Now, for all you ADHD TikTok attention spanners out there, you can just go and buy an awesome drum machine. You've got a link to it to the App Store down in the pinned comment. For everyone else, there are some stuff in here that I really want to highlight, and we're gonna start digging into them. Beats on the move, no booth, no desk. A pad and a vision, man, I need no rest. Designing my tones with the kit in my grip. The drums hit raw, every knob get a twist. Garage on the bus, man, I'm cooking in transit. Sounds from my head in my pad, that's it. Locked in the bounce, the Battalion stinger. From talk to tune, with the tap on my finger. I tweak those knobs, let the sound evolve. Battalion boost that you can't dissolve. Every hit refined, every beat precise. Synthesis, fire rolling, loaded dice. Hair drop the stems, then I ride that wave. Head down with the sound, chill while I save. No wires, no walls, the future I'm bringing. I'm off the grid, but the sound keeps ringing. The first thing I want to highlight is up here in the cogwheel menu over at the color scheme. You see, unfiltered audio usually provides the user with a wide range of color schemes. But in Battalion, they've done something extra. So if we go into this list and we just go down here where we got the octopus one, which is the one that I've selected. Well, it doesn't stop there because we can use the rotate slider here, which works like a hue control, and change the color again. And you can do that for all of the themes. And this is great because you can customize the UI to your taste, but in this video, you're going to be seeing this. Alright, so we're going to press the X here to back out of this menu, and we're going to stick up here in the upper row. Now, if you're using Battalion in a standalone mode, then you have the transport controls and the BPM settings over here. However, the BPM setting will be gone when you've loaded Battalion in an AUV3 host because that's being set by the host, and also the transport controls are then being controlled by that too. You just have to make sure that the play button is activated if you actually want Battalion to play whenever you're pressing play inside the host. Next to the transport controls, we've got the doo-doos. So if you end up doing any doo-doo inside here, then you can undo your doo-dooing by pressing undo. Now, even though there are more items in the cogwheel menu, we are going to jump over to the save icon, where you get to save whatever you've been doing inside Battalion. Now, next to the saving button, we have something that looks like a lock icon, and this is actually for locking down parameters. And I'll show you exactly what you can use this for in the voice page section of this video. Now, next to that, we have the preset browser where we can save, load, delete, import, and export our projects. In here, you can also find a wide range of different factory presets made by a wide range of artists. And you don't actually have to go into this list to select a different project. No, you can just switch between projects on these two buttons here, or you can hit the dice to get a random project loaded. Now, this is right now a little bit of an issue because you can accidentally switch to a new project, and Battalion doesn't have a system implemented for prompting you and asking you if you really want to do this. So I've lost work several times by just grabbing my iPad and accidentally hitting one of these buttons. We're talking hours upon hours of work here. I've already sent an email to Unfiltered Audio, and they of course thought it would be a good idea to implement a system to block this from happening. And if you're watching this video now in the future and you're wondering, is this still a problem? Always check the version update log for a piece of software before you buy it. On iOS, you just go to the App Store and you check the version log over here, and then you can see whether an issue has been taken care of. The last navigation items I want to show you are the page switchers. There are 5 of them. The first one is the voice page, which will show you all of the drum controls for each and every one of the 8 drum voices. A lot of controls to tweak. After that, we've got the performance page where we have genre controls. So if you tweak anything inside the envelope here, then it will tweak those controls for all of the 8 voices. Next, we have the sequencer page with all of the controls for doing sequences for individual drum voices. However, if you want to do it all at the same time, you can just go to the all page where you can see all of the sequencer lanes and their controls for all of the voices at the same time. Lastly, there is the mix and FX page where you can do your mixing, you can set up your send effects, or deal with any multi-out routing. Now, 25 modules is a lot, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to highlight my most favorite ones. But before I do that, there are 3 ways of selecting a module in here. You can either tap on its icon here in the carousel wheel, or you can use the arrows here on the side, or if you want to get to a specific one quickly, you can use the drop-down menu. Now, there's also 4 buttons here. The first one is an on-off button. You see, Battalion can be very heavy on resources, and if you're not using a certain engine, you should turn it off to save on resources. Now next, the amplitude of the engine is always being controlled by envelope 1, and if you want to change that, all you have to do is to activate this button and the amplitude will be controlled by envelope 2 instead. Also, the synth section will play in mono by default. But if you activate this button here called stereo, then it will simulate a stereo field, but not with a cheap Haas effect. No, it will sometimes duplicate audio generating sources and it will shift around their parameters, and in most cases, this will increase the CPU needs for Battalion. The first module I want to highlight is number 13, Reson. Probably stands for resonate. It's doing a white noise burst through resonant filters. So it's kind of touching upon Car+ strong synthesis. And the reason for starting out with this one is because I want to give you a pro tip. Whenever you're working with a multi-oscillator / module type of product, it really does help to do smaller knob movements, because sometimes the knobs have sweet spots spread out over the entire range of the knob. So if you're overdoing it, you might actually miss some really good sweet spots. And in the case of Reson, the material knob actually messes with the frequency relationships of the resonating filters. My next favorite is another one doing resonant synthesis. It's Kombucha, and it's doing white noise burst through comb filtering. So in this case, we have some proper Car+ strong synthesis, which is how this module is able to recreate sounds that are very close to instruments like berimbau, for instance. Now for my next favorite, we're talking snares, and there is an actual snare module in here called Snare, and it does snares really well, but it does produce those typical synth snares. And if you want something more natural, well, then we get to my favorite, Haywire. Now, if we talk kick sounds, there is an actual module called Kick, and it does those typical synth kicks. So you're working with a jump pitch oscillator together with a noise generator that you can add on top and filter. However, there are 4 other modules that I would say are kicky, like Tripwire works best on short kicks. Then you got Zap, which can also produce laser sounds. You got Radiator, and then there's Pillow, and this is my absolute favorite one. Now, another huge favorite of mine is the FM module, and that's simply because FM can produce a wide range of timbres, everything from toms to congas to metallic percussion. And if you overdo it, you can even get into noise, so you can make cymbals and stuff like that. My pro tip for you when tweaking an FM module, try everything and do it with care. Try every knob position and combination you can. The range of sounds that these modules produce is insane. Now, my next favorite one is Vosim, but not because it's a good drum module. No, I like it because it does vocal synthesis. And if you've been following me for a while, then you know I'm a complete and utter sucker for anything vocal synthesis. It produces formant type sounds that works really well for speech. And I don't really like using it for drums, but I do love using it for bass sounds. My next favorite module is the clap one, and that's pretty much what it does. Now, it can do other types of percussion, but it does claps really, really well. Now, it does have a combined bandpass and low-pass filter in here on this knob, but I found it beneficial to load a bandpass filter here in the tone section and actually further sculpt my clap sounds. Lastly, I want to mention 3 modules, namely Entangled, Terraining, and Shame. These are pretty wild modules where you can get crazy sounds out of them, and they basically consist of ripped out and condensed parts of Unfiltered Audio's Lion synthesizer. It's a very dope-looking modular synthesizer available for desktop and laptop systems, but there's still no iOS version. Hopefully, we'll get one in the future. In any case, I do urge you to explore these 3 modules because you can get some really fun sounds out of them. They're algorithmic, so when you're tweaking them, do it with small knob movements. I gotta say, I do love the whole multi-module thing here because it gives the user a lot of different synthesis methods with a minimal amount of controls, making it easy to tweak each engine and you don't really have to think about what you're doing. And that's why I love the Microfreak, the Braids clone I built for my second modular rack, and on iOS there are multiple apps that give you that type of functionality, like Elastic Ask for instance. We're about to jump over to the sample player engine, but before I do that, I want to point out this blend fader here, where you can mix between the audio outputs of the synth engine and the sample player engine. Alright, so navigating the sample player section. Now here we have the on-off button, and always turn this off if you're not using the sample player to save on resources. Now over here we have the engine type selector, and there's actually 5 different types of engines in here. And we'll have a look at that in a little bit. Over here we have the amp envelope selector, and as a default it always selects envelope number 2, and we can easily change it to either envelope 1, envelope 2, or no envelope at all, depending on how you want to work with samples. Now, just as with the oscillator section, with the sample player section, we only have 5 knobs to concentrate on. One of them is always the pitch, and then the other ones will change depending on what type of engine you're selecting. Now, there is about 1,000+ samples inside Battalion. And the nice thing is that if you don't want to go through this list, then just throw a dice. It's really that simple. Now, Battalion does support user samples, but it's not really a sampler, so you can't record your samples directly into Battalion. You have to bring them in from somewhere else, and you do that through the menu also by just importing samples. You simply navigate to where you have your samples, select your samples, load them, and they will become available under the user category. Now, we do have a lot of options depending on what type of sample player engine we're selecting. The classic one is just a classic sample playback with effects. So it's got fine tuning for pitch over here, we got a DJ style low pass / high pass filter, a compressor / expander, and an attenuator / saturator. There's really no use demoing it because it just plays samples back. But what we can do is to go to one of the other ones, because then it starts getting interesting. The first one we're gonna have a look at is Garbage Fi. It's basically a sample slicer engine. So the first knob controls the amount of slicing that happens in the sample. The next knob is probability based, and it will control how these slices are being played back, either forward or backwards. Now the third knob selects algorithms, basically, and these algorithms can do anything from randomized playback manipulation, adding repeaters, pitching, reverse, phasing. It does a lot, so tweak this knob with small knob movements. Oh, and this is the only playback engine that actually has an unused control. Next up is Phase Warp. It's a sample playback warper that deals with the actual playback of the sample. So the mirror knob will allow you to bounce the playback marker back and forth. The shape will control pitch slow down or speed up over time. The split control will change the playback speed in the middle of a sample, so it might start doing a slowdown and then it does a speed up. And the swing control will do a speed up too slow or a speed up too slow down. Now, thanks to these weird controls here, you can actually get this to make it sound as if you're scratching samples. Next up is a real favorite. It's called Cloner, and it does spectral variation with every hit, basically making it so that every hit makes a sample sound different. However, it does work the best with metallic sounding samples because of the technique or synthesis method being used here. The first control is just fine tuning for pitch. The next one is a DJ style low pass / high pass filter. But then we get to these knobs. The first one is called variation, and it controls the amount of spectral variation, while the last one, the damp control, will reduce or accentuate spectral ringing. Lastly, we got the granular sample playback engine, and it is my most favorite one because it does granular synthesis. The first knob, called size, controls the grain size. The second knob here controls the grain generation frequency. The third knob controls playhead speed from start end / end start. And the last knob does per grain random manipulation. It will change how stuff is being played back. Granular synthesis is fun, and here's a little pro tip for you, especially if you're into lo-fi beats. If you select the builder module in the synth section, which can provide you with a 50 or 60 Hz hum through the synth tone here and some filtered noise, then all you have to do is to add the granular sample playback engine in the sample section and set it up with a really short impulse-like sound. Well, this way you can build in your own vinyl sound into your projects. Yeah, I just love granular synthesis so much. Now, you might have already seen it, but if you turn up variation, it will also affect the sample playback controls, including the playback markers. And on top of that, you can also set up modulation for all of those controls, including the start and end markers. Now, there are basically three ways of modulating stuff inside Battalion. You've got variation, you've got conventional modulation, and lastly, you've got per step modulation done through the sequencer. So we're going to start with variation, and all we have to do is to turn this control up and it starts modulating all of the controls inside a drum voice page. That includes everything, and sometimes we don't want that. In my case, I very rarely want it to modulate stuff like pitch, panning, voice gain, things like that. So what you can do is turn on parameter locks. We do it by activating the lock up here, and then we just simply tap on the controls that we want to lock down. And as you can see, there's a red little lock on them now. Now, once you're done selecting controls, you just simply tap on the lock again to turn this mode off. And now, when we turn up variation, those controls that we just locked down aren't being touched. Now, variation is basically a sample and hold that gets activated and spits out a new value, high or low, every time a step is read in the sequencer. So basically every time a drum hits. So it would be very inefficient to use variation if you just wanted to get some variation out of a couple of controls, which leads us to more conventional type of modulation sources, like up here where we have something called random. And it is basically doing exactly the same thing as variation, only here you get to select exactly what you want to modulate. Now, you're gonna have to adjust for the fact that random is a unipolar positive type of modulation source, but in the end, it's still the quickest way of getting just a few parameters randomized. Now, velocity is a great modulation signal if you dynamically want to get some interesting modulation in there. And it can actually take information from two different places. One place could be from an external source, hardware or software. If you're, for instance, sequencing Battalion with a DAW or maybe hardware sequencer, or you're just playing it with a MIDI keyboard. Well, in that case, it takes MIDI velocity and transforms that into a unipolar positive modulation source. However, if you are programming it from within Battalion's own sequencer, then something else interesting happens. You see, as soon as we draw our animation in here, and when I'm drawing above 20, well, the pillar starts getting red. And that is because we're also driving up the distortion knob inside the tone section. Oh, and don't forget that you have a hardwired velocity sensitivity control down here for both of the envelopes. Now, the macro controls are very different from all other modulation sources because they actually do require you to interact with them. Now, what a macro controller is good for is, and we're going to select macro 2 here, we're just going to highlight this to turn on the mapping mode, and then we're going to start tweaking some knobs. And what I'm doing is I'm setting up a way for us to just control all of these parameters with one knob. I'm pretty much done there, so I'm going to go up here and deactivate the mapping mode. And now, as I'm tweaking the Macro 2 controller, I am now also tweaking all of these other parameters we set up. That's a good macro. And with this, you can do some pretty cool stuff. You see, if we go to the sequencer page and we select Macro 2 for modulation, then we can draw in per step automation of the Macro 2 controller. Now, Battalion is a massive part synth, so of course it's got envelopes and LFOs. And if we look at the envelopes, these are ADHD envelopes, Freudian nip slip flip. They are AHD envelopes, so attack, hold, and decay. But what I do love about these envelopes is that there's a lot of modular people thinking here because you can modulate each and every one of the controls in here. You can even modulate the envelopes with another envelope or with itself. And once you start adding LFOs to the mix, it all goes crazy. Now the two multi-mode LFOs, they actually have waveform engines in here. Now they got the bread and butter stuff like sync mode, so it's synced when it's highlight and it's unsynced when it's not. But when you're using the sync modes and stuff, try to mess around with the different reset modes, which you can find in this list. You even have a sample and hold for the reset mode. Now, when it comes to the wavetable engine in here, the first one is basically like a wavetable filled with basic waveforms. So you can go all the way from sine wave to triangle and on up to sample and hold. And if you want a sample and hold, but you want it to smooth it out like a Perlin noise, then you select the smooth random down here, and you basically control the smoothness with the shape control. You got pulse in here and also triangle tilt, and triangle tilt can be tilted so hard that it produces ramp up or ramp up sawtooth waveforms. Now once again, there is a lot of modular people thinking here because the LFOs can be completely modulated. So all three knobs in both multi-mode LFOs can be modulated. And yes, you can modulate the LFOs with themselves or with other LFOs or with any of the other modulation sources in here. It's very dope. We head on over to the settings section here where we have a mult and speed. Now these two work together, and the mult basically allows you to either multiply or divide the speed or rate of the sequence. All right, so stick with me here. We're gonna have a look at the amounts of steps we want in a sequence. Right now, snap is on, and when snap is on, it's working with multiples of whatever the steps knob inside the Euclidean generator is set to. So even if you're not using the Euclidean sequence generator, this thing still has a relationship with this snap function. So we're gonna keep the snap on, and when you have snap on, you cannot do unevenly stepped sequences. All right, so an example. Right now, the steps knob is set at 16. The snap is on, so it's going to be working with multiples of 16. So even if we add another step for length here to making it 17, it's not doing 17 steps. It's doing 32 steps. Since we're one above 16, the closest thing when working with multiples is 32 here. So what happens if I change the steps knob? If we change it to 10, we're now getting a sequence of 20. Yeah, if you're good with basic arithmetic, this shouldn't be a problem for you. But what if we did want a sequence with uneven steps in it? Well, all we have to do is to turn off the snap mode, and now we can set it to any number from 1 to 64 steps. So we can do a 17 step, no problem. Now I've got everything reset in here because what I want to do next is to show you the generative side of Battalion. And we're going to work together with the Euclidean generator and the steps we program in. Now we're also going to keep the Euclidean sequencer and the main sequence separated by making sure that snap is turned off. Now we're gonna just put in 2 red steps here. Those are the ones that I'm programming in by hand, and they're always gonna be in those spots. Now, what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go to the Euclidean generator section, and we're gonna pull down on steps to, let's say, 13. Now we're gonna add a fill of just 2, and we're gonna change the pattern of these to 4. And we're gonna rotate these a little bit too. Now, as you could see in here, the red steps never move, they will always play the same steps. However, the Euclidean generated steps, they will just move around and they will keep doing that like forever. But what if you still want the generative flare but you want it locked down? Well, this is when you start using reset. So just activate it by tapping on it, and then we can set the amount of steps we want to reset at between 2 and 1024 steps. If you're into really wonky or scuffed beats, then the modify panel is your best friend. Now, first of all of these knobs are bipolar, so they've got a center detent, and then they've got either a positive or a negative. So if we look at the shift, this one will nudge the playhead to be either early or late. The swing will change the timing of every other step. And shape, which is an adorable function, it will actually make the sequence speed up over time if you twist it this way and slow down over time if you twist it this way. It completely mucks up the rate of the sequence. I absolutely love this thing. Alright, so the last knob in the modify panel is a probability feature. It's called density, and when you had it set at 0 like this, that means that all of the triggers inside the sequence has a 100% chance of firing. So all of them will play. But if we turn it down like this, then you will have less of a chance getting these triggers to actually trigger something. Now, the interesting thing happens when you turn it up, because now inactive steps has a chance of firing. Now, one thing to highlight here is that shift, swing, shape, and density aren't the only ways that you can actually mess with timing for steps in a sequence. You also have humanize. The thing is, this one is global, so it will actually affect all of the 8 drum voices and all of their sequences. Next, we're gonna have a look at automation. And the first thing I wanna show you is how you set up sync and also sequence length. In this menu here, we have the sync modes, and in sync, the sequence will basically just follow whatever the main sequence is doing. So it will be the same length and all of that stuff. Now in free, we get to set the length ourselves with this drop-down menu. Now the trigger and retrig ones are really interesting because with trig, the sequence will only advance a step whenever it detects a trigger, and the retrig option works the same way. However, it will actually reset the parameter sequence whenever the trigger sequence resets. And a pro tip here is to use trigger sequences when you want to do something melodic. It's really straightforward. We select pitch as the parameter we want to tweak. We set the length to 3, and then we program in our pitches. We add a few triggers in the main sequence, press play, and watch the magic happen. Now there's a lot more parameters that we can automate in here. Velocity, shift, pitch, ratchet, envelope, panning, variation, probability, sends, and macro. Now my most favorite ones are the ones that will change stuff up and make stuff not sound the same all the time. Probability is a true favorite because we can literally just fill in all 16 steps and then program in negative probability settings, making certain hits less likely to trigger. This means that even though you have a 16-step sequence, it is going to end up sounding like a 32 or a 64-step sequence thanks to the probability settings. Another true favorite is the variation, and it's actually the big knob you see inside the voice page. However, here we get to set it on specific steps, and this also gets more interesting if you make sure that the sequence is of an odd length, basically making that variation just wander around and hit certain steps over time. The sends one is also really interesting because when you're tweaking it in positive values, meaning up like this, you're sending it to the delay. But if you're tweaking it down in the negative values, then you're sending it to the reverb. So you can have a big booming reverb on one hit and a messed up delay on another hit. Alright, so having a look at the performance page, if you quickly want to switch back to the voice page, you can use this selector up here, and if you press up here again while you're in the voice page, it will send you back to the performance page. Now there's a lot of knobs in here, but we're gonna highlight just a few of them because most of these knobs are pretty straightforward. You see, all of these parameters will tweak all of the knobs in the same category on all voice pages. So if we're tweaking decay here, we're tweaking 16 parameters. Yeah, that's right, because there's 2 envelopes on all voice pages. If we're tweaking pitch, we're tweaking 8 knobs because there's 1 pitch knob on all of the voice pages. But there are some special knobs in here, and one of them is the mod amp. Now this one will actually intensify by tweaking this way or minimize the effect that all the modulation has on all of the voice pages. So it literally sets the strength of the modulation set up on every page. Another special control is the global depth knob, and it affects whatever you might have done inside the performance page. So if you tweak the depth down to 0, then whatever you've done inside the performance page will have no effect at all. It's like setting everything to 0, basically. Now this is a bipolar control, and so if we turn it up this way towards 100, then if we have done anything with the pitch, it will be turned up. If we do anything with the envelopes, they will become longer. Now if we turn it the other way, then pitch would be turned down, envelopes would get shorter. So not only does this control let you audition whatever you've done in the performance page, it also allows for some cool performances. Now there is one more special knob in here, and it's tied to the randomize function. And the randomize will basically randomize controls on the performance page. And the knob will set up the amount of randomization that you will allow for. Now there is also two buttons here. One of them, reset, isn't that special and will just reset all of the performance controls down to 0 so they don't affect your patch at all. Now the commit button though, and I put up a warning here because the commit will reset the performance controls, but before it actually does that, it will read all of the values put in on all of these controls and then send that to the voice pages and lock them in. Now there are two rows of buttons here on the side. There's one called enable and one called flip. Now the enable one will allow you to turn off whatever you've done on the performance page for an individual voice page. And this can allow you to either A/B the sound between the performance page sound and the original sound. Or while you're performing, you might actually want to use the original sound for some of these drums. Now, flip, however, works like a bipolar switch or a flip, so it will turn everything around. If you've turned haQ this way, when you turn on flip, it will turn it the other way around. It won't show you that visually, but that's what it actually does for all of the performance controls on a voice page. Now we're heading over to the all section. And even though it's its own page, I still consider this to be part of the performance control package because you can access a bunch of sequence controls for all of the voice pages all at once. Over here we have the Euclidean sequence controls. Over here we've got the modify controls. We've got the mult control here. And over here we can actually set up what type of parameters we want to automate. So if we go in here and we select, for instance, shift, it will select that for all of the voice pages. And now we can draw in automation for it. We can also change the syncing and also the step length for all of the sequences. It's all very straightforward, and the last thing I want to highlight is up here, because right now it says A in there. If we press it, we get sent directly to the sequencer page. This will allow you to flip between the all page and the sequencer page. So if you want to do some specific changes for a sequence for voice number 4, you select it, press the A again, and you're right there on the sequencer page. Now on the main voice pages, we can always find controls for the master bus out with its EQ, a selector for the clipping modes, and also the maximizer up here. Now down here, however, we find mixer controls like panning and voice gain, and then we also have controls for send amounts for delay and reverb. If we go over to the mix and effects, we can find all of those same controls. Now the master bus will always be on the right here, but then we have all of the voice pages and their individual sends and also mixer controls. Now in the middle here we have group controls, and the one called trigger will allow you to set up a behavior where one channel triggers another. So if we select voice 7 here, then voice page 7 or channel 7 will always get triggered every time the bass drum gets triggered here. Now choke, however, will do the exact opposite. It will choke out or stop the channel from being triggered. So if we select channel number 5, then whenever channel number 1 is triggered, it will actually stop channel number 5 from being triggered on that step, even if it has drum triggers right there. Watch me over-explain choke groups. Now the routing will only concern those of you who are working with a multi-output session. And so if you're not doing that, you can just keep this as it is. But if you're working with a multi-output session where you want to have individual drums being sent out on their individual buses, then you have to route them through these menus here. Now we've got two send effects in here. We've got a shatter delay and a headspace reverb. Now they both have bread and butter controls, like the delay having time, feedback, and a feedback filter tilt. And then for the headspace reverb, we've got pre-delay, we got decay, also in and out filter tilts. And I say filter tilts, but you can view these as DJ filter controls. So turning it this way will turn it into a low pass filter, and turning it this way will turn it into a high pass filter. However, there are two special controls in here called sample rate, and these will actually introduce kind of like a bit crushing effect into the delay or reverb tail. Now both effects have some special controls though. So if we look at the delay, we do have a way of actually ducking the delay tail with itself through the ducking knob. We also have a glitch control that will mess up the delay and even timing. So if you set it to 1/8 or 1/16, it won't matter. The glitch will just mess that up. You can also sync the delay time, and you can switch between a stereo and a ping pong mode. Now, if we look at the reverb, we have a sync option here so that the pre-delay can be switched over to work with quantization instead. And down here, we have different reverb algorithms. Lastly, in between the delay and reverb, we actually have this knob, which allows us to route the delay right into the reverb. Lastly, we have the master bus, where all of the audio comes out of, if you are not working with a multi-out session, because the effects and whatever is happening on the master output, well, that will only come out through the master output channels, which is 1 and 2. So if you're individually routing out drums, you won't hear any effect on those channels, and you won't be able to affect them with the maximizer or the clipping or the 3-band equalizer here. Now, when it comes to the actual stuff in here, like the clipping, there is some special stuff like the wave folding instead of clipping. I absolutely love having that on the output because it does crazy stuff with your sound. And the maximizer doesn't feel bread and butter at all. It does weird things. It will over-exaggerate reverbs, it will prolong tails, and I gotta be honest, in the beginning when I started working out with Battalion, I really didn't like this effect because it is so weird. It doesn't work like normal maximizers at all. It does something more, but it turns out that I kind of like it for certain things. You'll have to try it out for yourself, and I'm really happy that Unfiltered Audio went out on a limb here and did something different. always make sure to check the version history or update history for a piece of software or hardware before you buy it. Especially if you watch the review where someone is critiquing something, maybe a function, maybe something missing, then the developer might have already addressed the issues. So always check first. Now, I've been working on this video review for about 3 months, but I've been using Battalion every day for about 4 months. And we're not talking about 20 minutes here or 10 minutes there. No, we're talking about hours upon hours per day. So I want to start by talking about Battalion's user interface and how some parts of it doesn't really play nice with touch. And why is that important for me? Well, I've been iOS based for the past 14 years. I don't use desktop and or laptop computers in any of my work. In fact, every video you watch on this channel have all been made on iPhones and iPads. And one of the biggest reasons to why I chose to go with this platform is due to its touch-based interface. That's right, I love touch, baby, and I hate using external input devices such as typing keyboards, pencils, or computer mice. Now, with all of that said, you can probably imagine how annoying it's been for me whenever I go to the sequencer and I start adding steps to it. You see, it's kind of workable up to 32. You can still finger this fine on an iPad. And I've got an M2 iPad Pro. It's a big model, but even with all of that space, once you go to 48 steps, or what about the maximum 64? Well, this is unbearable. You can't work this on a screen with your fingers. You're gonna have to use an external input device. And this is fine whenever I'm in the studio because I have all of that gear already in there if I need it. I'd rather not use it, but here I have to.
But you can't do this to me.
Alright, that's enough whining about that. My next bit of criticism has to do with the lack of patterns inside Battalion. What you see here is what you have. You can't switch to another pattern or make a variation of the same thing. No, you basically have to save an entire new project as a preset. So that is something that Unfiltered Audio is already working on. At least they told me so in the email. So they're working on it, but I don't know how close they are to any fix or when it's coming. Now, my next bit of criticism has to do with the lack of export options for these files down here. And these are basically presets for whatever you've done on a voice page. So anything you've done with the synth, the sample player, anything in the modulation, it can all be saved down as a preset. And so if you start a new project and you need that favorite bass drum you worked on for 3 hours straight, you can just load it as a preset here. But for some reason, we cannot export these. Yeah, I would have loved there to be export options for these, but what I really wish for is a way of saving kits. It would make it so much easier if you want to try out different sounding kits on various projects, but yeah, we can't do that. And I actually did ask Unfiltered Audio about this. I sent them an email and that's when they responded with the whole pattern system thing. So I don't think they're thinking in those lines, but yeah, we can always hold out hope. And that quite frankly takes care of the criticism part I have for Battalion. In the end, I highly recommend Battalion. I absolutely love using it for drums. There's just so much synthesis to draw upon here. I love the multi-module engine. I love the fact that it's not that much you have to think about when it comes to tweaking the engines. You just need to tweak 4 knobs basically for the synth engine. And it's the same thing for the sample player engine. Even though I don't use that much, there's enough engines in there and different modes that it will definitely scratch any type of sample player itch that any of you sample users might have. I love that the modulation sources can all be modulated themselves with themselves. I love the options you have in the sequencer and the ability to mix a Euclidean generator with what you program in yourself, how to do uneven steps for even the automation. Yeah, it's just great. And I gotta tell you, a true dot over the I is the performance page. I mean, you can really go stupid with all of these controls whenever you're done building a beat and jam it out. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually sat here just jamming and then realized that whatever I'm doing in the performance page right now, it actually makes all of the drums sound better. So I better just lock that in and reset. Yeah, to round this up, what I want to say is whether you're a producer using iOS or laptop or desktop systems, then I just gotta say I can't recommend Battalion enough. It is a great piece of software. I absolutely love it so much, and it's become part of my main tool set now, along with another bunch of great apps I've discovered over the years. You can find an app link to Battalion on the App Store if you want to go and buy it yourself, down in the pinned comment and also in the description. And next, I just want to say thank you to all of my patrons who have been sticking with me even though my output has been slow. And I want to say thank you to all of you who are watching right now and to all of you who will be watching in the future. I just want to thank all of you for all of your support. And as usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.